I was very interested in the editorial that you wrote with Michelle Wu about the Winthrop Sq 775-foot project.
Yeah.
How did that come together? How did you and Michelle get together on writing that proposal?
I'm sure I must have said something about it. Or maybe she did, or maybe we connected, or whatever. And I think Marty Walsh's been a darn good mayor. I just am very concerned about this city and where it's going. And I'm the guy that signed the bill imposing height limits to protect the common and the public garden. And that happened during the so-called Park Plaza project,
Right.
where we knocked the city down, and Kevin and I were friendly, from 215 feet to 90. And lo and behold, Park Plaza has been developed with a 90-foot height limit, and it looks pretty good, doesn't it?
Looks great, yeah.
And in fact, that controversy created the Friends of the Public Garden. I mean, there was no such such organization. People come to this city these days.
51 Beacon Street is the president.
And they say, wow, this city is beautiful. Let me tell you, the Boston of my youth was not a city where people said, wow, this is beautiful.
I remember, and my parents told me it was even worse. Back to your editorial with Michelle Wu.
Right.
So it sounds like you're not too familiar with the process of how we've gotten to the point where we are. You're familiar with the BRA, of course.
I'm very familiar with the process.
Right.
I signed the bill that imposed the height limits in 1990.
Right. No, I'm talking about, so where I'm going with this is Michelle Wu has been very involved in this process not being transparent.
Okay.
And
yeah.
she has voted to give the building away without public notice.
Which building are we talking about?
Winthrop Sq garage.
You mean the garage?
The garage. That was voted away in a illegal manner. They were chastised by the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And and that's what I expected. I expected that you didn't know about it. And so because I know and everyone knows you have a man of great integrity.
I hope so.
And so
I'm really surprised at that. I mean, this is public property. And
right.
there is a process that the city is supposed to go through. And
Are you familiar with, and again, this is arcane Boston City Council stuff, but something being called from the green sheets?
No.
You know what the green sheets are?
No.
So this is what happened with the process. Is the mayor wanted to give the property away, owned by the citizens of Boston, to the BRA, an independent agency, as you know.
Still controlled by the mayor.
Still controlled by the mayor, exactly. So to do that, he had to have the city council vote to give the property away. Now, they tried to do it first, but then a good government advocate said, actually, the city council has to vote on giving away something worth tens of millions of dollars. So they came back, and the city council had a hearing at which the head of the BRA testified, the property's worth $10 to $30 million. Other people, Municipal Research Bureau, were like, this is a terrible deal for the city, don't do it. Other people testified this property is worth 100 to 200 million. Please, City Council, please, Michelle Wu, don't give this property away without due process.
Okay.
And then the way the City Council rules work is a bill can be introduced in June, and then without any public notice, it can be brought up at any other time throughout the year. And so unannounced to the citizens, the day before, December 8th, in an arrangement arranged by two city councilors in backroom deals with the BRA, without letting the citizens know, at the end of a meeting in December, the city council president says, I'd like to pull this out of the blue, or the green sheets. And he talked about it, and the other councilor that negotiated with us with the BRA said, I'm for this, I'm for this. No discussion by any other councilor asking about the giveaway, how much it's going to get, how much the city's going to get. No questions from Michelle Wu. It gets voted on and given away. Not a public process at all. Good government advocates have been asking Michelle Wu, who is now the city council president, to do away with this pulling things from the green sheets. good government advocates sent letters to the Attorney General, who looked into this, who said this was not done in conjunction with the open meeting law, but said, well, we'll let you get away with it anyway. But you did violate the law. And I feel like, frankly, you've been used by Michelle Little to now write an editorial in the Boston Globe. Transparency is important. We need to get public input. We need to do all of this. And how am I, as a citizen who's been following this for 10 years, has testified that this property is worth $100 to $150 million, and then I see an editorial from the person involved in not having the public involved, writing a co-editorial with yourself about how important it is to have the public involved?
Look, I'm not familiar with the details, obviously. You know,
Right.
I want to talk to Michelle and so forth.
Right.
But what I was focused on, obviously, was what is this going to do to Boston?
Mhm. Are you in favor of the shadows?
Am I in favor of shadows?
Yeah.
I think the common and the public garden are sacred territory.
Couldn't agree with you more.
I don't care what the development community wants to do.
Right.
And when I think about all of the work we did to get the Park Plaza project done in a way that cast zero shadow and produced a very lively part of town from what was a vacant lot with a single Playboy club sticking up in the middle of it.
I remember the combat district.
I don't
Combat
understand
zone.
the compelling need to Manhattanize this city. Not only don't we have to do that, I think it would be a terrible mistake to do it. What's special about Boston?
The Boston Common.
Well, history is important, and protecting that. And remember, I lived through a period where we tore down an opera house on Huntington Avenue. Couldn't replace it today for $100 million.
Gaiety Theater.
It was a parking lot. Now it's a northeastern dormitory. I don't know if you've ever read the book Lost Boston by Jane Holtz Kay. Take a look at it. It'll tell you the things that we tore down in this city. And if we hadn't launched a 10-year battle to defeat the Master Highway Plan, let me tell you, this city would have looked like Los Angeles at its worst. An 8-lane elevated inner belt coming through Roxbury, 3 feet from the Museum of Fine Arts, right through Frederick Law Olmsted's Emerald Necklace, in front of Simmons and Emanuel,
Yeah.
through Beach Park and Brookline, this gem of a park, across the Charles River, smashing its way through Cambridge and hooking up on the other side. And we were told you had to do that. Took us 10 years, we finally killed it. Look at the city now. Can you imagine what the city would have been like? And by the way, it would have been as ugly as the Central Artery,
Right.
which we tore down
Right.
because it was so ugly
Right.
and blocked us from the harbor.
Let's talk about public transportation.
well, let
quickly.
me just-
Okay,
so-
sorry. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I don't see the compelling need to
Yeah.
let developers, and they're good people. I mean, they're some sensitive people in development.
Beautiful buildings they've built.
But and a 775-foot building loaded with what? $10 million condos? I don't know what it is.
Mixed use.
And this is public property. Now, obviously, you want transparency and that kind of thing. But if it's public property, you can insist that the development be as sensitive, tasteful, and respectful of this great city, which you can put your arms around. You know, you don't have to get sunburn on the roof of your mouth because all you're doing is looking up, like New York. Nothing against New York, but that's New York.
Right.
That's not Boston. We had a group of 25 or 30 prominent young Vietnamese folks come here, and I was asked to speak to them. And they'd been in town for about a week, and I said, "What's the thing that strikes you most about Boston?" You know what they said to me? "It's beautiful." Nobody back in the 40s and 50s when I was growing up in this town ever said, "Boston is beautiful."
Yeah. I have fond remembrances of the elevated green line on Canal Street and going to Boston Garden, but that's just because I was a kid and it was so great to go to Boston Garden.
How about right through the South End?
Right. The orange line, the elevated orange line, of course.
You know, I mean, talk about a blight.
Yeah.
Look at it now. I mean, you know, it's Soho or So-Wo or whatever they call it. And yeah. I mean, there's so much. Now, we've got a housing problem. I mean, the supervisor, my former student I was talking to, obviously has exactly the same thing in San Francisco. How do people of modest means remain in San Francisco? And he's been fighting a big battle over this thing. But why would you take public property where you can basically insist on anything and not make that a gem of a development that fits beautifully with the city? Instead of okay, so the developers are going to give us $150 million to spend on housing and parks. That's fine, but once it's spent, that 775-foot building is going to be sitting there.
Right.
Well, they just knocked it down to 700. I'm sorry. That doesn't. Think about it. We knocked Park Plaza from 215 down to 90. This is going to be This is going to be 700. I don't understand.
I'm going to leave you with the memorandum of understanding. That's another thing about your editorial. It says, oh, it's going to be for parks and public housing,
Yeah.
but that's just political speak. If you look at the actual memorandum of understanding, it says it could be used for, but not exclusively for this, which means nothing, as you know, as a Harvard-trained lawyer. But it's cover for politicians, covering for developers to say, oh, we need to build a 700-foot tower.
I understand it's, you know, times are tight. You've got cuts.
The city budget went up by 5% this year without getting $150 million.
And Boston is doing well.
Right.
And it's doing well in part because there's an awful lot of new construction and this kind of thing. And that's fine. But this is a city now that can afford to be fairly picky about the kind of development that takes place because it is so desirable.
Right.
And my hat's off to the mayor on the affordable housing thing. From the get-go, he was talking about 53,000 units of housing, and once they complete the 53,000, they got to get going on another 53,000.
Right. The Project 2030.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But I just, I mean, if there's, I mean, who knows? It's half the morning, all the morning, part of the morning, but the common is going to be in shadow. I just think that's unacceptable. I just think it's unacceptable.